So let's go now to something that's a little more challenging. Double click on this one. Now here's a shot where we got a lot of camera movement. Notice that camera is moving all around. That's a little too much for the stabilized by itself without some modifications to handle. So we're gonna use stabilize, but we're actually gonna do what's called a lockdown. And basically, this camera was roving, and I don't need it to rove. I just want it to be in lockdown. In other words, if I could keep him right in this position here, that would be perfect. Okay, so this time I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to drag stabilize onto that segment. But as soon as I drag it on, I'm going to hit the space bar to stop it from processing. So I'm going to drag it on, drop it right there, and hit the space bar. Because I'm not using the same stabilization method as I used before. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and show you another option here. We're going to do a lockdown. So this time we're going to leave the fluid stabilizer and we're going to put on correlation tracker. And I'm going to go over here where it says display. I'm going to say tracking data. And point range, I'm going to put that on current. And I'm going to take this back to the previous. And when I do that, you see this window, this little box, two boxes, a box in a box with a X in the middle. That is our tracker point. And for a lockdown camera, we just need one tracker point. Now, if your camera is moving and you're also doing a zoom, then you may need more. But that's a more advanced level, and we're not going to get into that in this particular session. So with the tracker point here, what you need to do is you need to find a high contrast area. So what we do here is we'll go back over here to our effect edit window and we'll zoom in. Okay, and one of the and two things you have to look for. Number one, you want high contrast between light and dark. Number two, you want to make sure that that point you use to track doesn't leave the screen. So in other words, if we scroll through this, you'll look over here on the edge. You've got this area here that's dark and light, but notice that it moves off the screen. So we don't want to use that. So we're going to go right above his ear here, which is a good spot. So we drag the X and put that right on his ear. Okay? The inner box gives us the region to stabilize, and the outer box gives us a secondary region for the stabilizer to look at. Sometimes if this box is too small, it won't give you a good stabilize. So what we do is we just grab this dot in the upper right corner and we make that box a little bit bigger. Now you don't want to make it too big because then it's going to take too long to stabilize, and if that box is off the frame, it's going to give you some problems too. So now that we have this set, we go back to our tracking window and we make sure that we're back at the beginning of our track. So we hit go to previous region and hit start tracker. Now the other thing we want to do is we want to turn off steady glide, because we don't want any movement at all. So we turn off steady glide and make sure that smoothing is turned off as well. Then we hit the start tracker. And when we're done, now if I play this, notice my image doesn't move at all. It is what we call locked down. So if I'm going to play these two together, notice he never moved. So we've got this, or if I take that effect away, we had this. You see how much it's moving around. So again, that's another use of the stabilizer, but this time it's a more manual function where we have to set the parameters. By the way, you can go back at any time. If I'm going too fast, then just stop stop the video clip, back it up, and go through it again. Okay, the next thing we want to do using a corrective tool is in this fourth keyframe, and this is one where clicking on the fourth marker, this is a situation where you see we got a runner and he has a pair of goggles on. Those are Oakley goggles, and we don't have any authorization to show the Oakley label, but I don't want to have to go back and reshoot this, so we're going to use some tracking data and some blurring to get rid of the Oakley symbol on the side of his goggles there, especially right there. You can see it very plainly. So we're going to go, again, same category, image category, and close to the top there's an effect called blur effect. So we're going to grab that blur effect and drop it right on to the segment clip. And now we have to animate it. So we're going to go to the effect mode and open up our effect editor. And when we do that, you will notice that we have a beginning keyframe and an ending keyframe. Now, first thing we want to do is we want to be able to track the movement. You'll notice that as we play that, he bounces up and down and he moves forward, and so there's a lot of movement there. And if we had to try to fix this by just putting different keyframes, it would take us forever. So the first thing we want to do is, you will notice in the effect editor along the right column here under the HQ there is a tracking tool. So we're going to, first thing we want to do is park all the way back at the first keyframe. And by the way, the best way to get to keyframes is hit the rewind or fast forward. Notice if I am on the last keyframe and if I hit rewind, it takes me right back to the first keyframe. So we're going to go back into our effect editor. We're going to click on the tracking tool, and when I click that on, that opens up something that you've seen in the previous example, and that is a tracker. So we're going to grab this tracker, and since it's the logo that we want to track, then we're going to park this right, that X, we're going to put it right on that blue O. And there should be enough contrast there for us. We might want to make this box just a little bit bigger since there's a lot of movement. And when we do that, we just go ahead and press the Start Tracker. And boom, we are done with our tracking. And that should have, our box should have pretty much stayed with it, because you'll see that O never leaves the screen. Okay? And then we just go ahead and turn our tracker off. So what we've created now for the blur effect here is we've created a tracker that's kind of in the background, but it's tracking that Oakley symbol. Now what we want to do is we want to create our blur. So again, we go back to the very first keyframe, and we'll go to our rectangle tool here. Click that on, and we go over here, and let's just draw a rectangle. It doesn't matter if what size it is. And then we're going to go back here and we're going to click on our reshape tool, and when we do that, we're able to grab these corners and just put them where we want them. So let's grab them and just change this shape so that it covers pretty much just the Oakley symbol. Okay, and then we can go to our final keyframe, but before we do that, we want to go ahead and turn on our tracker. And all that we're going to do here is open up the tracker parameter, and we're going to click on the no tracker right here, this little button, and then we're going to go to this fast menu and say T1.A. That's all we need to do. Okay? Then we're going to go to our last keyframe, and we're going to reshape that with this reshape tool, and we'll put it down like this, like this, like this, and maybe like that. Okay, now we can add a little bit of feathering here, so we want to make sure the first keyframe and the last keyframe, those two keyframes are selected. So what we can do is we can just click in here anywhere and then do Command A, and that will select both keyframes. Then we go back over to our effect editor, open up the feathering, and just give it a little bit of feathering, not a lot. We want to make sure the Oakley is gone. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our first keyframe. Our shape is good there. Go to our last keyframe. Our shape is good there. Now we're going to go back to the first keyframe. We're just going to slide through this. Okay, right there you'll notice that my box goes way off, so I'll go back over to my effect editor, make sure that my reshape tool is selected, and I'll just grab these corners. Now notice as soon as I do that, a keyframe appears here, which is exactly what I wanted. It'll automatically put the keyframe in for me. So I'll reshape it like that, and then I'll go a little bit further, and notice it really jumps out here. Okay, so I will grab again and my reshape tool like that, and okay, it tracks pretty good there, but it bounces out there. So I'll do this. Again, you get the general idea what I'm doing. I'm just grabbing these corners and covering up that logo. Okay, so it really jumps out there. I'll do the same thing. Okay, and kind of jumping out here. I'm not being as precise as I could be here, but I think you get the general idea. Okay, so, and then maybe right in here, I want to pull it back because he really turns his head there. And kind of pull it back like this. Okay? So if I play through that, it's pretty much tracking. I got one spot here, right there, where I need to fix it a bit. And there we go. I still have another spot where it jumps out, but you get the general idea. And then when you're done, you just hit the render button, and again you hope that it tracked pretty good. Okay, and that's pretty much what you do then to create a blur, a tracking blur to cover up a logo or something that you don't want to be visible.